Egypt dispatches its 22nd aid convoy from Rafah to Gaza via the Kerem Abu Salem border crossing. Riyad Mansour reaffirms the inalienable right to establish an independent Palestinian state. And the Hezbollah leader emphasizes that the Lebanese government bears the responsibility to achieve national sovereignty.
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت سنتين ونص صارت تصدم.
Egypt has dispatched its 22nd humanitarian aid convoy to Gaza, including 3 fuel trucks and essential supplies such as food, medical items, and hygiene products. The convoy, part of the Zad el-Izza, the Provision of Honor from Egypt to Gaza initiative, crossed from Rafah and awaits Israeli inspection at the Kerem Abu Salem crossing before entering Gaza. This aid comes as Gaza faces its first ever recorded famine due to the ongoing Israeli blockade and conflict. The Egyptian Red Crescent continues coordinating relief efforts at the border. Israeli strikes on the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, Gaza, has killed at least 15 people, including 5 journalists and a rescue worker. Among the dead was Hossam El-Masri, a Reuters cameraman. Another Reuters contractor photographer, Hatem Khalid, was injured in a second strike that hit after first responders and journalists arrived at the scene. Reuters confirmed the casualties and called for urgent medical aid for Khalid, and the Israeli military confirmed a strike in the area and said an inquiry had been ordered. The Palestinian Journalists Syndicate condemned the attack, saying over 240 journalists have been killed in Gaza since October 2023. Reporters Without Borders, the RSF, has called for an emergency UN Security Council meeting following an Israeli airstrike on Gaza's Nasser hospital that killed 5 journalists. The RSF Director General Thibault Breton condemned the attack, saying the 3rd floor hit by a suspected suicide drone was a known workspace for journalists, and a second strike followed just minutes after emergency crews arrived. Breton accused Israel of targeting journalists under the cover of a smear campaign, urging global leaders to hold the Israeli government accountable.
Like, for example, Reuters or, for example, AP.
Palestinians' UN representative Riyad Mansour has reaffirmed the inalienable right to establish an independent Palestinian state, condemning Israel's military control over Gaza and its obstruction of Palestinian statehood. He denounced Israel's illegal settlement expansion and called for intensified regional efforts to halt the Israeli violations. Highlighting the use of starvation as a weapon of war, he urged accountability for Israel's crimes in Gaza. Mansour emphasized Palestine's readiness to collaborate with all parties to resolve the Gaza crisis and rejected Netanyahu's rhetoric on Greater Israel. His remarks underscored the urgent need for justice and peace, delivered during the organization of the Islamic Cooperation's emergency meeting addressing the escalating humanitarian and political situation in Gaza. Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan has declared Israel's actions the gravest threat to regional peace, firmly rejecting any military control or forced displacement in Gaza. Speaking at the organization of the Islamic Cooperation Emergency Meeting in Jeddah, he reaffirmed Saudi Arabia's unwavering support for the Egyptian and Qatari ceasefire efforts, emphasizing that Palestinian statehood is an inalienable right. He condemned Israel's unprecedented assault on Gaza, its blatant defiance of international law, and deliberate obstruction of humanitarian aid. Faisal called for urgent international intervention to halt the Israeli crimes and highlighted Saudi efforts to unify the Islamic stances against these violations. The OIC stressed that the Palestinian cause remains central, holding Israel fully responsible for the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. And Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has addressed the extraordinary session of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation in Jeddah, condemning Israel's systematic violations and escalation in Gaza, including collective punishment and obstruction of aid. Abdelati underscored Egypt's pivotal humanitarian role, providing 70% of Gaza's aid and treating thousands of Palestinians. The Egyptian foreign minister demanded Israel allow unrestricted aid entry and held it fully responsible for the ongoing crisis and rejection of ceasefire efforts. He denounced Israeli expansion in the West Bank, violating international law and jeopardizing the two-state solution. Emphasizing Egypt's unwavering support for Palestinian rights and statehood, he welcomed new recognitions of Palestine and urged more countries to follow. Egypt firmly rejects forced displacement and any policies undermining the Palestinian self-determination. And Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has held a bilateral meeting with the Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan during the organization of the Islamic Cooperation Emergency Session in Jeddah. Both ministers condemned Israel's ongoing aggression in Gaza, highlighting violations of international and humanitarian law, including starvation and civilian killings. Abdelati reviewed Egypt's coordinated efforts with Qatar to secure a ceasefire, ensure unhindered humanitarian aid, and facilitate detainee releases. They praised the growing ties between Egypt and Saudi Arabia following the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's August 21st visit, emphasizing the need to build on this momentum to strengthen their strategic partnership and regional stability. Both expressed eagerness to activate the Supreme Coordination Council soon and underscored sustained cooperation on regional and international issues. Amid Gaza's ongoing suffering, Egypt emerges as the lifeline, delivering aid, healing the wounded, and mobilizing nationwide efforts to sustain hope for Palestinians. For more analysis, we now move to Hala El Hamalawi in our newsroom. Hala.
Thank you so much, Selma. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al Ahram newspaper managing editor, Mr. Ashraf Al Ashri. Welcome to Qnews, Mr. Ashraf. How does Egypt's denunciation of Israeli actions align with its strategic goals for regional stability and its relationships with Western and Islamic nations?
Of course, Egypt is one of the foundations of the Arab nation. Egypt's stance is firm on the matter. The scenery in Gaza has been devastating. Cairo has been leading international efforts to put an end to the devastation and catastrophe in Gaza. Egypt has been long acting as a safe place for Palestinians. Egypt has been denouncing Israeli actions since the beginning of the war, and before that. We want the aid convoys to enter and the aid to flow in. We saw Egypt's participation with Arab or Islamic nations in these international efforts. We want now to voice our opinion to the international community. We want them to move and put a stop to the ongoing Israeli aggression. That's why we had the meeting today, Dr. Badr Abdulati, with representatives from the Arab and Islamic countries in Jeddah.
So, to what extent can Egypt's diplomatic initiatives compel Israel to permit unrestricted humanitarian aid during the conflict?
Egypt's stance, despite the Israeli barricades, we resume helping Palestinians and getting the aid convoys in. And as the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs previously said at the meeting that was held today in Jeddah, we have approximately 550 tons of humanitarian aid that entered. That's why Egypt's stance is on securing the Palestinians' food security and safety. We also are conducting several initiatives for the same purposes.
So sir, I want to ask you, allow me to interrupt you, but in what ways could Egypt's demands for prisoner releases and ceasefire agreements impact the humanitarian situation and political landscape of conflict?
Egypt is one of the states. Egypt is one of the most knowledgeable and understandable states in the region of the Israeli mindset. Since 2014, we have seen how the Israelis move, and we tried to change the equation there. In November 2023, we doubled down our diplomatic efforts to put an end to the ongoing conflict. And as we can see now, there is a change that looms in the horizon. A ceasefire might be possible, and maybe a permanent deal.
And what regional security consequences might arise from Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank concerning the two-state solution and, of course, the overall peace efforts?
Egypt has long warned since day one of the E1 Israeli strategy. We warned that they aim to expand and annex more lands. And we have been denouncing the Israeli stances. As our foreign minister said today, with his in his meeting with Faisal bin Farhan, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia, that Egypt is willing to put an end, along with its Arab and Islamic collaborators and other nations, to the Israeli annexation plans and settlement expansion plans in the West Bank and in Gaza.
Well, that was Mr. Ashraf El-Ashri joining us from Cairo. He is Al Ahram newspaper managing editor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Now we go back again to Salma Al-Fiqi in our studio. To you, Salma.
Thank you, Hela. And moving on to Lebanon, where the Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem has emphasized that the Lebanese government holds the responsibility to develop a concrete plan to achieve national sovereignty. Qassem urged the government to engage in intensive sessions focused on strategies to restore full sovereignty over Lebanon's affairs. He highlighted that reclaiming sovereignty is the fundamental demand from the Lebanese government, stressing the critical importance of decisive action to safeguard Lebanon's independence and uphold its national dignity. And moving on again to Lebanon, where an Israeli drone strike has killed one person in southern Lebanon's Bint Jbeil district. And according to Lebanon's health ministry, the attack targeted a pickup truck on the Ain el-Mazrab Tebnin road. Despite a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah reached in November, Israeli strikes in the region have continued almost daily. Russia has released footage showing its flag over a damaged building in Filia, claiming its forces have captured the Ukrainian village. The Russian Defense Ministry published drone footage from Filia in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region, though Reuters could not verify the date of the images. The location was confirmed by satellite imagery matching landmarks seen in the video. And Moscow announced on Sunday that its forces had taken control of the village as fighting continues across eastern Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine reported fresh strikes and heavy clashes along the front lines on Sunday as both sides targeted key facilities. Russia claimed its forces struck a Ukrainian missile depot, drone production sites and other targets, while also taking control of a settlement in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region. Moscow added its air defenses shot down 3 HIMARS rockets and 172 drones over the past day. Meanwhile, Ukraine said its forces attacked an oil refinery in Russia's Samara region in a joint operation with the military intelligence. Kiev reported 85 clashes across the front lines, including 31 in Pokrovsk. Russia and Ukraine have exchanged 146 prisoners of conflict in a swap mediated by the United Arab Emirates. And Russia's defense ministry said its servicemen are receiving medical and psychological care in Belarus before returning home. Among those handed over by Ukraine were 8 residents of Russia's Kursk region, briefly seized by the Ukrainian forces in August last year before being recaptured. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky confirmed the exchange but did not disclose figures. Heavy rain and strong winds have battered China's Hainan province as Typhoon Kajiki weakens while moving towards Vietnam, triggering emergency measures. And China's National Observatory issued a yellow alert warning of gales and rainstorms across southern and southwestern regions through Tuesday. The National Meteorological Center said the storm was located in the Bibo Gulf, moving west-northwest, and is expected to make landfall in Vietnam Monday night. Authorities urged preparations for possible flooding and landslides in coastal provinces, including Hainan and Guangxi and Guangdong, as strong winds continue across nearby seas and straits. A massive wildfire has scorched more than 21,000 acres in central Oregon, forcing authorities to step up containment efforts. The flat fire, burning northeast of the town of Sisters since Thursday, has created apocalyptic scenes across the region. Firefighters are battling difficult conditions, though authorities expect reduced fire activity as cooler overnight temperatures provide some relief. A community meeting is planned for Monday to brief residents and outline safety measures as containment efforts continue. Severe flooding has swept through Yemen's southern city of Aden, leaving widespread damage and prompting urgent evacuations. Days of torrential rain sent floodwaters surging through canyon areas and carrying runoff from neighboring Lahj province into the sea. Many houses, some built on riverbeds, were heavily damaged, along with roads temporarily trapping hundreds of families. Civil defense teams, supported by community volunteers, launched evacuation efforts and moving most stranded residents to safety as authorities urged people in high-risk zones to leave immediately. Rescue teams in Pakistan's Punjab province are urging villagers to evacuate as water levels in the Sutlej River surge. Authorities have already evacuated more than 19,000 people over the past 24 hours. The Sutlej River has reached a high flood level of nearly 130,000 cusecs at Ganda Singhwala, triggering a high alert. Evacuations are underway across multiple districts. Rescue teams are focusing on voluntary evacuations, but warn that forced measures may follow if water levels continue to rise. The US Open saw a dramatic upset as Benjamin Bonzi defeated former champion Daniil Medvedev in a chaotic five-set first-round match. The match was disrupted when a photographer stepped onto the court as Bonzi prepared to serve for the win, prompting protests and heated exchanges with the chair umpire. The 6-minute delay appeared to shift momentum, sparking a Medvedev comeback before Bonzi sealed victory 6-3, 7-5, 6-7, 0-6, 6-4, and fans cheered throughout, adding to the tense atmosphere, while Medvedev openly criticized the umpire and called for accountability over the officiating incident.
Please, not now.
Novak Djokovic has advanced to the second round of the US Open, defeating American teenager Lerner Tien in straight sets. The 38-year-old Serbian star battled past Tien 6-1, 7-6, 6-2, securing his 80th career win at Arthur Ashe Stadium and extending his record to 75 straight opening round Grand Slam victories. Djokovic, who is chasing a record 25th major title, overcame physical issues and a brief dispute with the chair umpire to claim the win in commanding fashion. Portia Woodman-Wycliffe has extended Women's Rugby World Cup try-scoring record to 21. She crossed in New Zealand's 54-8 win over Spain, moving 2 clear on the all-time list. And defending champions, New Zealand overcame a tough first half to secure a 54-8 victory over Spain in York. And Georgia Miller and Aisha Letiliga each scored twice, with further tries from Liana Mikali to Georgia Ponsonby and Teresa Setefano. Woodman-Wycliffe's record try cements her status as the leading scorer in tournament history, surpassing England's Sue Day. Colombian scientists have identified a previously unknown human lineage after sequencing the DNA of ancient remains discovered near Bogota. Researchers at the National University's Genetics Institute say the lineage, named the Chickawa, dates back around 6,000 years and was found at archaeological sites in Cundinaboyacense Plateau. Dr. Andrea Casas said the DNA showed genetic markers never before reported in the Americas. The study, which analyzed remains from about 30 individuals, also revealed evidence of early human migration through Central America into Colombia nearly 20,000 years ago. In Kampala's Kamwioka settlement, young people are learning to grow food in small spaces through a community-led urban farming initiative. Launched in February by the Community Development and Livelihood Project, the program teaches container and vertical gardening to tackle youth unemployment and food insecurity. Project manager Edward Liuma Gawelwango said the goal is to change young people's mindset towards agriculture and create jobs. In Kamwioka, where many live on less than $1 a day, the initiative provides training and fresh produce, turning unused spaces into thriving gardens and hope for better livelihoods. And hundreds of corgi dogs and their owners gathered in Vilnius for the annual Corgi Race, a lively event celebrating the beloved breed with races, competitions, and a colorful costume show. About 120 Welsh Pembroke and Cardigan Corgis from across Europe competed in sprint races and a 50-meter dash, while showcasing creative outfits from airplane and reggae-themed costumes to rabbit ears and doll designs. Race organizer Edvinas Miskas said the event both honors the Corgi breed and the special bond between dogs and their owners. Owner Marius Balodis called his Corgi a walking meme who brightens every day with cuteness overload. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin, and here's what we've been covering. Egypt dispatches its 22nd aid convoy from Rafah to Gaza via the Karam Abu Salem border crossing. Riyad Mansour reaffirms the inalienable right to establish an independent Palestinian state. And the Hezbollah leader emphasizes that the Lebanese government bears the responsibility to achieve national sovereignty. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG to stay informed. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.